So because any small point of question is also very important and technical. Okay, that is very important. So we discuss about a servers and services, right? So what are the servers? What is the services? Okay, so different type of servers and what are their services, like a web server give provide a web services, file server, upload download, DHCP server, DNS server, active directory server. Okay, deployments of different type of servers are there. Similarly, we also discuss about a work group domain and active directory database and authentication. The one there is a two more important is there, that is called a DHCP. Next one is DNS. Next class I will talk about a DNS. Otherwise, I will forward DNS related videos. Okay. So first of all, you have a PC, you have a computer. Okay. You have your own computer. If you have a laptop or you have a mobile phone to communicate in the network. Okay. You are connected, of course. You are connected in the network. This is a symbolic representation of connecting in the network, guys. It does not mean it does not mean a bus topology. Of course, bus topologies look like this one, but still, it's a symbolic representation of devices connected in the network. Okay, so I have a devices like a computers or laptops are connected in the network. But to make a communication between these devices, so we have to address them, right? For example, there is a person, you want to call him and tell something, right? Or you want to write a letter to someone, right? To address you have to give, and from address you have to give. So you have to give both to address and from address in the letter. Or maybe you want to compose a mail. Same, to address from address is important. What is this address while you are communicating in the network? Is IP address. Okay. When you are communicating in network, you need a address. Which address it is? IP address, not MAC address, IP address. It's a logical address. We know already. Now, how these PCs having an IP address? How this IP address will be there on the PCs? Okay. How this IP address will come? You have to install something there. Not required. You have to configure IP address, right? You have to configure IP address. So I'm going to network connections directly using ncpa.cpl. Okay. So there I can see an adapter like this. For example, this is one of the this is my main adapter. This is one of my adapter. Or I will go to this one. Okay. So double click details. So this is a already IP address is configured. DHCP enabled no means it is a static or a manual IP address. I'm going to properties. I want to change my IP address. So what I've done, so I select IPv4 here, properties, IPv4. This is IPv4 properties. There it is. You want to configure manually. That is a second option. You want to configure automatic mode means you want to get an IP address automatically from the server. Automatically from the server, you want to get an IP address, or you want to configure it manually. That is the second option, right? So obtain IP address automatically means you want to get an IP address from DHCP server. You want to configure your own IP address. That is a use following IP address. This is the manual configuration. So what is the difference between configuring manually? Manual configuration IP addresses cannot be changed when you change the network. If I have adapter, I configured adapter with a manual IP address. Now I went to somewhere, some different network. I connected into that network. My IP address won't change automatically. I have to change the IP address according to their network. Next, this is a laptop or a desktop. We can easily understand how to change the IP address. How to change the IP address on the laptop or desktop, we can understand. But certain devices, example, mobile phones. How to change an IP address for mobile phone? Okay, your mobile phones, tablets, right? TVs, LED, smart LEDs, smart LEDs, Echo Dot, Alexa, Echo Dot, certain printers, network printers. So for certain devices, it is very difficult to assign IP address manually. For certain devices, it's difficult to assign IP address manually. Second one is, everybody don't know how to assign IP address, right? I know the how to assign IP address. For example, you take sister, my sister is there. She don't know how to assign IP address. For example, my mother is there, my father is there, my nephew is there, my Gio is there. So they don't know that there are some are maybe technical per people may not be technical. Okay, some maybe they understand how to assign IP address, how to change an IP address as per the network, they may get it. Next, large number of computers increases in the organization, like 100 computers, 200 computers, 500 computers. It is very difficult to assign IP address to more number of devices. So what we have to do it, we use a server called a DHCP server, which is also connected in the network. So this is my DHCP server. What is this DHCP server will do it? It give IP address to the client automatically. So that is very simple. The client should select a first option, obtain IP address automatically. Then obtain IP address automatically. Then the client will get an IP address from DHCP. Just a simple sentence, but there is a deep sentence also there. We'll see. Again, once again, guys, what is DHCP? Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Port number 6768. DHCP server assign IP address to the clients automatically. Okay, assign IP addresses, both manual and automatic way of assigning IP address. Already I explained advantage and disadvantage of manual. Manual is it is a stick IP address, so we can it won't change automatically. Large number of devices increases difficult to assign IP address for each one. There is a possible that there is a wrong IP address or a similar IP address, means there is a conflict may occurs. Not everyone knows an IP address, how to assign IP address, and cannot assign these IP addresses to certain devices like a printer, smart printers, network Wi-Fi printer kind of stuff, mobile phones, smart LEDs, smart TVs kind of stuff. It's very difficult to assign IP address. What is this automatic? Automatic means dynamic way. So DHCP server will assign IP address to the clients automatically. Whenever you take your PC and connect in the network, and the network in that network there is a DHCP server. So that DHCP server will give you IP address. So automatically your IP address changes according to their network. There is a less or no wrong IP address assigning, or a less conflicts or no conflicts at all. Conflict resolve automatically. Everyone not required to know how to assign IP address. So I don't require to know how to assign IP. And different devices automatically get an IP address from the DHCP server. Guys, in our home, the DHCP server is like your router is act like your DHCP server. Guys, look at here. I have a four PCs and there is a DHCP server. DHCP server scope is like DHCP server will give an IP address to the clients from 192.168.1.10 to 192.168.1.11. 110, 1.110. So that is like your 10, 11, 12, like that. So it is giving an IP address. For a CPC, I already configured manually. 1.11 already configured. So DHCP server don't give IP address to CPC. It will give to A, B, D only. Once it is given an IP address, the IP address is look like this one. See, IP address 192.168.1.12 for a PC, DPC. Subnet mask, default gateway. Who is the DHCP server? 192.168.1.1 is a DHCP server. And sometimes if it is having some DNS kind of stuff, like a router kind of stuff is there, it will give DNS server address also. So guys, who is this DHCP server? In our home, our Wi-Fi router act like a DHCP server, or you can use Windows server for a DHCP server or Linux server for a DHCP server. Or maybe there is some applications works like for a DHCP server, like a VMware DHCP servers also there. That's a different point. Understand, in your home, in our home, our Wi-Fi router act like a DHCP server. Or in our organization, you want to control more about DHCP server kind of stuff, we are going to install in a Windows servers or Linux servers. Okay, so this is a main point of DHCP server, dynamic host configuration protocol. This is the working thing. What is this working kind of stuff? Here it is a DHCP client and there is a DHCP server. The client don't know who is the DHCP server. So what it do? It broadcast a packet called a DHCP discovery packet. It broadcast DHCP discovery packet to everyone in the network. Next, what happened? So whenever a DHCP server received, it broadcast a DHCP offer to everyone. Everyone means there is a in a packet building, guys. Always remember, in a packet there is a source IP, destination IP, and source MAC address, destination MAC address. But in this broadcast, IP address won't be there. In these broadcasters, IP address is not much important. Here it is MAC addresses. How to identify a device without an IP address is MAC address. It is a unique. So DHCP server identify this DHCP client by their MAC address, but exactly don't know where is this client PC. So what it will do? It broadcast. It send a broadcast back. Okay. Next, DHCP's client received a packet. DHCP client received offer packet. So this is the IP address. Yes, I want this IP address. Then it will send a request to the DHCP server. Then and DHCP server finally send take this acknowledgement. It contains IP address and other configurations, lease durations, and everything. This process we call it as a DORA process. DHCP process we call a DORA process, discover, offer, request, acknowledgement. So in this picture we have a lot of computers, but here it is only two, so that we can easily understand. Guys, in this side DHCP client try to discover where is the DHCP server by sending discover packet. Okay, and a DHCP server when it is received, it send a DHCP offer to DHCP client. DHCP offer to DHCP client, and DHCP client is send a request. Yes, I want this IP address, so it will send a request to DHCP server. DHCP server finally send an acknowledgement with the full configuration of IP address to the client, like this. It is reside completely configure and lease duration. Okay, so it is called a discover, offer, request, acknowledgement. That's a DORA process. Discover, offer, request, acknowledgement. The client discover server, server offer IP address to the client, client send a request to the DHCP server, server send an acknowledgement with a by configuring IP address. So already I told, right, this one, right? Um, you want to get IP address from DHCP server, you have to select obtain IP address automatically. You want to configure manually, then you have to select second one, use the following IP address. This is APIPA guys. Already I think I told this one. APIPA means you are in this mode. DHCP enabled yes mode. DHCP enabled yes mode. Obtain IP address automatically. Okay. Now DHCP server got some problem. You are not able to get an IP address from the DHCP server. What I said, you are not able to get an IP address from DHCP server. What your system will do, it assign an IP address itself. You don't wait, it assign an IP address itself. Like so you can see this is DHCP enabled yes means I have to get an IP address from DHCP server, but I'm not getting IP address from DHCP server. So what happened? My PC is getting an IP address in this one auto configuration IPv4 169.254. Meaning is you are not getting an IP address DHCP server. You are not getting an IP address from DHCP server. So this is obtain IP address automatically means getting an IP address. Guys, can you see this is alternate configuration, automatic private IP address. So again, see this when I select the second option, this tab is gone. This tab is gone because it is a fixed IP address. If in case if you are failed to get an IP address from DHCP, configure APIPA address. APIPA, if you got an APIPA, means it is a error. Means it is a error. If you got an IP address like this, meaning is you got an error problem. So first of all, you have to check with your DHCP server. Is DHCP good or not? Connectivity, IP address, scope, like that. First, you have to check with your DHCP server. Is everything good with the DHCP server? Troubleshoot the DHCP server. Once it is working fine, then come to your client PC, check you are getting an IP address or not. If you are not getting an IP address, again, if you are not getting IP address, first of all, I have to check the my DHCP server is working fine or not. First of all, I have to check my DHCP server, my DHCP server connectivity, everything I have to check it. Once I checked it, so make sure I am getting an IP address. Make sure that I am getting an IP address or not. So see, this is how to check whether I am getting an IP address or not. Still, I am getting this APIPA address. Okay, what I have to do it? So right click on it, go to disable. Go to disable. Disable the adapter like this. So it is disabled and enable it again. So what happened? It is try to do DORA process again. It try to do DORA process again. Of course, I won't get any IP address here, guys. Do not worry because I don't have any DHCP server connected to this particular adapter. Here I got the IP address, but you don't. Here it is. I getting an IP address because it is connected to router. It is not connected to any DHCP services, so I don't get it. But simply I'm telling first check your DHCP server, make sure it is working, connectivity is good. Then still you are getting an IP address like this, APIPA address, then disable, enable. Or you can use command prompt, go to ipconfig, release, then it will remove the old IP address. This is also last time one batch people got this question, how to flush the IP address. So ipconfig space slash release, it remove the old IP address and renew, it try to get the new IP address from DHCP server. Means again DORA process will start. That's it about your DHCP, guys. Next means Monday we will discuss about DNS and other kind of servers. Okay, that's it for today. Join into Madam class. Okay, so that is the best thing. Okay, so you can